Halloween Ends released in 2022, and unfortunately to most people's surprise, this was a very unsatisfying end to the trilogy brought to us by David Gordon Green and Blumhouse Productions. Since this was marketed as the last Halloween showdown between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode ever, a lot of people expected a very big fight scene, a lot of people expected a crazy story, but unfortunately for us, that's really just not what we got. In my opinion, I wouldn't place Halloween Ends as the worst movie ever. I don't think it's an incredibly bad movie, but do I think it was a good way to end the trilogy? No, I do not, and for that reason we are going to be taking a look at that today. We got a new interview from David Gordon Green explaining his actions on why he went this route for Halloween Ends, and we're just really going to talk about the expected outcome of this movie and the outcome that we ended up actually getting as fans of the Halloween franchise. So welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Haydxn, and today we are going to be talking about, is Halloween Ends really a bad movie? Without further ado, go ahead and grab yourself a snack and a drink, sit tight, and let's get into it. Like I said a little bit ago, Halloween Ends came out in 2022, and it was supposed to wrap up the new Halloween trilogy brought to us by David Gordon Green. When I say Halloween trilogy, I'm talking about Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. This movie definitely branched out and did something very different, but I don't think that it's something that they should have done on the last movie of the trilogy and then market it as the last showdown between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. And honestly, I think it's for that reason that this movie's probably not as good as it should have been, but let me explain. So the main part of this movie was our introduction to new main character Corey Cunningham. So Corey basically took on this role that he had went through so much as a young adult that it basically had turned him evil. And after turning him evil upon his encounter with Michael Myers, he basically was like transferred Michael Myers' powers. So they kind of made it seem like Corey Cunningham was like the second coming of Michael Myers. Another thing really weird in this movie was it was a several year time jump. So by the time we ended up seeing Michael Myers, he was all like old and decrepit in this cave. He could barely walk. He couldn't even do a kill scene by himself. He had to have Corey help him. It was so weird. Number one, it was weird seeing a teamwork dynamic between Michael Myers and another person in this movie, but it's also weird considering the amount of years we've seen Michael Myers as this powerhouse, and now he's just this really weak old man with no power at all. A big argument when this movie came out was the fact that Michael Myers only had about 10 minutes and 50 seconds of screen time. This argument was disproved considering that the original 1978 Halloween only showcased Michael Myers for about 9 minutes of screen time, but I can counter the disapproval of that argument because this being the last Halloween movie, not only in this trilogy, but marketed as this last Halloween movie between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. Mind you, this is a feud that we've been watching since 1978. I don't think that we should have only gotten 10 minutes of Michael Myers. That is just insane to me, especially after the marketing campaign and all the hype that this movie had behind it. They made it seem like it was going to be such an incredible showdown between these two people, but unfortunately it was not. So apart from 10 minutes of Michael Myers, the majority of this movie was basically following Corey and his journey of turning evil and hurting people, and also trying to get with Laurie Strode's granddaughter Allison. Honestly, to me, it felt like a romance love story movie. It didn't feel like I was watching a horror movie at all. Yes, it had its aspects and it had a couple of decent kill scenes, but apart from that, this did not feel like a Halloween movie. I honestly feel like I could have watched this movie and halfway through forgot that it was even about Michael Myers in the first place. So instead of focusing on what made the franchise what it is, David Gordon Green wanted to try something different with this third installment in the trilogy, and unfortunately for him, it didn't quite stick the landing the way he probably thought it would. Well, that is what we thought until we get this brand new interview from David Gordon Green with IndieWire. So this is coming from iHorror.com. It says, in a recent sit-down with IndieWire, Green was asked about those divisive horror films that fans really wanted but were dissatisfied with. Talking about divisive horror films, they're talking about the Halloween Ends, and they are talking about The Exorcist Believer, which is a reboot that David Gordon Green was behind, but that movie also fell flat. Green says, I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of strong feelings, but the beauty of those movies is that you make it low budget and nobody is breathing down your neck to make it work for everyone. They are coming to you and saying you can make your movie, just don't make it expensive. So if I can make movies that are respectful of the business model, for example for Nutcrackers, which is a new movie that David Gordon Green is working on currently, I wanted to make a movie that my kids could see. I have 2 young twin sons, and I'm not going to let them watch a lot of movies that I've made. Another thing he revealed about Halloween Ends is that it wasn't a spiritual reboot of Stephen King's Christine, but rather inspired by a forgotten comedy drama called My Bodyguard from 1980. If you have seen that movie, it all makes sense. If you haven't, you are probably more confused now than ever, which I can second. I have no idea what's going on right now while I'm reading this. And he says, as you see with the Halloween movies, the choices I make aren't always the most popular ones, so it's trying to make something that me and my great friends at Blumhouse and Morgan Creek want for that property to be fulfilled, as much as the audience is there and has the appetite for it. I don't think they were on the journey that I was excited about taking. Okay, a few things. Number one, probably not. A lot of people were not on this journey that you were excited about taking because a lot of people were expecting a Halloween movie showcasing Michael Myers and his battle against Laurie Strode for the final time after 50 years. So while I'm not necessarily against the idea of you branching out and making this new movie, I don't see why you would have done it in this 3rd movie in the trilogy while hyping up this movie in the trailers and in like the teases and stuff that we just didn't end up getting for the end result. So I can understand what he is saying to an extent, but you can't be mad at people being a little bit upset when they were expecting this certain type of movie and it's not what they got, and then you're trying to make it sound like they weren't on the ride that you were taking them on. You should have been taking them on the ride that they wanted to be on, and that's the thing with any type of fan or consumer of any product or any television show. You need to be giving the people what they want. Sometimes branching out and doing your own thing is really what you need to do, because if this were to pay off, if it were to stick like you wanted it to, then people probably would have been looking at this as one of the greatest horror trilogies of all time, especially one of the greatest horror reboot trilogies of all time, because like I said, it had been so many years that we hadn't gotten a good Halloween movie. For me, honestly, the last good Halloween movie we had gotten up until this point was the first Rob Zombie Halloween, and even a lot of people don't agree with me from that standpoint at all. I understand I am in the not so vast majority of opinions, but I wholeheartedly understand why fans, including myself, were just a little bit disappointed with Halloween Ends. Like I said, we had been following this story since 1978. Well, I haven't been following it since 1978. I'm not that old. But the first Halloween released in 1978, so whether you watched it then or you watched it like you're my age now and you watched it when you were a kid, we've been following this for a very long time, and for this to be marketed as the satisfying big ending, it just wasn't. And that is my standpoint, and that is a hill that I'm willing to die on and plant my flag on. Halloween Ends was an incredibly unsatisfying ending to the Halloween trilogy and an unsatisfying end to the Halloween story as they marketed it to be. But ultimately, that's just my opinion on everything. Do you guys have an opinion on Halloween Ends? Do you think it did what it was meant to do, or do you think it fell just a little bit short? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you did enjoy this video, then please be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you're going to subscribe to the channel, then you might as well go ahead and click that notification bell, because it is literally right there next to that subscribe button. My name is Haydxn. It was a pleasure having you here on the channel, and I cannot wait to see you guys here in the next video. Peace!